Namaskar, Nileshok, and back with another episode. The title of the episode is very interesting. Okay, so who knows, this may go viral. Now, may go viral for different reasons, but that only time will tell. Let me tell you the topic. The topic is Brahmaloka, time travel, and Mahabharata warriors. Okay, I think the title is good enough for it to go viral. Okay, let's get into the context. So let me share the screen. And start with the title. Brahmaloka, time travel, and Mahabharata warriors. And if you are thinking I am going to give answers to all of these, then you are in for a surprise. Also, you must be wondering what is the connection of Mahabharata warriors with time travel and, for that matter, even Brahmaloka. Alright, I don't want to hold the mystery for too long, so let's get into it. Now, what I'm going to discuss is a very typical scenario, hundreds and hundreds of these, and it's very tricky how to respond to this. I did respond to this, and I will briefly discuss what my answer was, but all of this began just today with a question from one professional individual who is based in Europe and of Indian origin, and asked me this question. We have to refer to this individual in some way, so we will call him SS, okay, just for simplicity, the initials, and that would be sufficient for this discussion. The focus is not on who asked the question, and so there will be, as I discuss this, to elucidate different aspects of science and logic, scientific acumen, and empirical testing, and how we should properly draw the inference, how we should select a proper problem. Because you know what, selection of a problem, selection of a right question is more than half the battle. In fact, there is one quote that is attributed to Albert Einstein. I don't know if this is true or false, that's why I said attributed, and that's kind of always true. We just don't know whether that person exactly said this, but it is attributed, where Einstein had supposedly said that if you have a total 1 hour, spend 45 to 50 minutes in deciding which problem you want to work on, and then refining that problem or refining that question, and then use the remaining 10 to 15 minutes to solve it. Whether Einstein said this or not is immaterial, but the point is still valid. There is a lot that goes into deciding which problem to work on, which problem to solve, and the modern science, the philosophy of science, but also the logic of scientific method gives us a lot of insights on how to go about it. But even more than that, our Nyaya Darshana, our Darshana Shastras tell us a lot also. But specifically, we will stick to Nyaya Darshan, and even within Nyaya Darshan, few very specific aspects of Nyaya Darshan. So, I will be critical in analyzing the email or the message that I received. In no way this is a critique or a criticism of the specific individual SS that who asked the question. In fact, I get similar questions, different questions, but similar level of clarity, or rather lack of clarity, all days. Many of them are so atrociously nonsensical that I don't even bother responding to them, and no question of me discussing this. I selected this because these, I mean, all 3 points that are discussing, that are mentioned here, the Brahmalok, the time travel, and Mahabharata warriors, these are all very interesting things. These are all realistic things. These are all scientific things. Yes, there are other planetary systems, and one way we can say there is life on all planets. But even if that's not true, in our reductionist understanding of what life is, or with our ability, or rather lack of ability or limitation of our ability to test life on other planets and so on, but we know that there are other planets, and statistically and using many factors, we know that there ought to be living entities, whether we have found the evidence or not. So Brahmalok is interesting in that way. With Einstein's theory of relativity and all that good stuff, the time travel is very interesting. As you may know, thousands of years before Einstein's thought experiment, after his discovery on relativity, we have the Bhagavad Puran story of King Kukudmi taking his daughter Revati to either Indra or Brahma. I forgot which one it is. At least right now it's not coming to me what the exact one is. But in any case, he goes to that planet to ask either Brahma or Indra or whoever as to who is the proper groom for his beautiful daughter Revati. And then the conversation, well, I'll tell you the story hopefully if I get time in this episode. But the point is, the concept of time travel and its implications are there in possibly many other stories in our ancient Indian narratives, but definitely a brief mention in Bhagavad Puran with respect to King Kukudmi and his daughter Revati, who eventually, as the story goes, married Balaram. Okay, this is Mahabharata times, more than 7,500 years ago. And then the connection with the Mahabharata warriors, let's jump into the question itself that this individual SS asked, and this will become clear to you. Now, he is very sincere about his question. He also has this doer's attitude. So he was not just asking me to figure this out, which many others do in an extremely idiotic and careless fashion. Now, somebody asking me to do something, I'm not calling it either careless or idiotic, but they have not done any work of their own. They are not aware of my work other than maybe watching few videos, and then they purely waste my time. That's why I call it careless, casual, and idiotic. It is that, guys. Okay. This is a message for those who really ask useless questions. I usually end up muting them, closing them, I mean, whatever the way I can protect it, or my team does that on my behalf. But this person is individually, actually a sincere individual, appears to be sincere individual. So he's asking with a genuine inquiry, genuine curiosity. So I'm calling this as a request for guidance. Let's jump into it. He says, Dear Nileshji, I have been fascinated with your dating of the Mahabharata and Ramayana. I wanted to know where Brahmaloka was and if different time dilation references in the Puranas have correlation. This would also help me understand how the warriors were in their 70s and 80s during the war and able to sustain the rigors of the battles. I am trying to explore if time travel during their lives here is a factor. If someone travels at near light speed to a far away planet or star system and comes back here, we will have aged some years while the traveler would only have aged days. I wanted to know how I could contribute to your teams to find out. Would you please provide guidance and kind regards? And I gave him the answer. I will not discuss that, okay, because it's still ongoing communication. He has no time to respond to this until yet. As I said, it came just this morning, okay, so that conversation might evolve, or it may be even end of that conversation. But I wanted to take this opportunity to discuss this. Why discuss? The idea is not that hundreds of people just warm up and send all kinds of emails to me. Well, don't do that. And if you do that, I have ways to control that. But this was a well written question, well written email, and it was sincere. I could sense the sincerity in it. But it's also naive at many levels. Okay? And therefore, I said it's not a critique or criticism of this individual, but this I see as a general trend, okay, in Indic space. This is not to say that in non-Hindu tradition this issue doesn't arrive, but many times the non-Indian or non-Hindu, which is to say Abrahamic traditions, are simplistic to begin with. Okay, and the kind of proof or the concept of proof, at least that they have in the religious sense, is very different than a scientific sense. But that is not the case when it comes to Sanatana. Okay, so here we have no distinction of a Adhyatma and a Vijnana. Adhyatma is a refined Vijnana and Vijnana is refined Adhyatma, which means we have to get out the clutter, we have to remove the clutter, okay, separate the grains from the chaff. Okay, for example, which Upanishad I'm trying to think. Brahma Bindu Upanishad, I think. Okay, he says Grantham. If you want to get knowledge, okay, so study all the Grantha in earnestness. Okay, Jnana Vijnana Tatparaha and Jnana Vijnana Tattvataha. Okay, to get to the essence of it, but also do it with earnestness. But once you have done it, even it goes on to say Palalamiva Dhanyarthi Tejed Grantham Asheshata. Then you can throw away the Grantha. Okay, just like you separate the grains from the chaff. Whereas many, all Abrahamic religions, but even that element you can see. So all human beings are directionally same everywhere. So you see that element even in the Indian, Hindu, Sanatana context, like Puranic traditions, or then we have a Pravachanka traditions where layers and layers of mysterious things get added, sometime for entertainment, sometime for adding esotericism, whatever may be the background explanation, but those things gets added. For example, some of the things, and I will explore those using our Naya Avayava network, the Pancha Avayava framework, or the logic of scientific method, both are exactly identical. Is like how some of those ideas are basically have no way, we have no ability to scrutinize them, we have no ability to analyze them, at least with the available science and technology. This one is one such. Okay, so I wanted to bring that to your attention, and I thought this was a good one to discuss. Everyone is familiar with the doubt clearing machine. If you are not, stop this video, get on my other videos, become familiar. Okay, go beyond the surface level knowledge of this logic of scientific method. Spend some time reading Bhagavad Gita, spend some time reading Nyaya Darshana, spend some time reading books by Sir Karl Popper, Conjectures and Refutation, The Logic of Scientific Discovery, and some 20 plus other books. Read books by Richard Feynman. Okay, read books by Stephen Jay Gould. Okay, read books by Fritjof Capra. Okay, so many other individuals. That is our Jnana Sadhana. So this is our doubt clearing machine. We have a tough problem to solve. It better be tough. But in selection of that tough problem, there are many additional elements to consider. And when those are not considered, what we are end up with is naivety. Okay, this individual like SS asking me this question is not the first of its kind. Over last 15 plus years at least, I have received many folks. Now they will run into thousands, and I'm not kidding and I'm not exaggerating. If anything, I am underestimating that number, where people will want to have a certain idea in mind and they want to test it. People already write the books based on a Purana, then send it to me, ask for my opinion, and sometimes it's very hard to actually even respond to such questions based on what they have written. Okay, in nowhere you can see any close resemblance to the use of this Pancha Avayava method. Okay, and it's extremely frustrating, So If you start with this, you have a tough problem, then you have to solve that problem, you propose a theory. Okay, watch some of the interesting talks of Richard Feynman. Wonderful talks. Okay, in 1 minute he explains the process of science. He says, well, you have a problem, you want to solve it. To solve the problem, you come up with a solution. And how do you come up with a solution? Well, you take a guess. That's our hypothesis. And what does that happen? What happens next? Once you take a guess, as if like a possible solution, a plausible solution, immediately, because of that hypothesis, a statement of a theory, immediately with respect to the problem you are trying to solve, it are going to have consequences. It are going the theory, the hypothesis is going to give you predictions. And once you have a set of predictions, now you go look for the evidence, you go look for observations in the nature, or create them in a methodical fashion in the lab. Okay, create thought experiments, turn them into actually empirical experiments, perform those experiments, collect the data. Now you compare that data with the prediction because of your guess, namely the hypothesis. If they match, it's time for some excitement. That doesn't tell us whether that guess is right or wrong, but at least the evidence and it's matching with the predictions because of the guess, aka also known as hypothesis, they match. We failed to reject that hypothesis, so that's why it's a positive thing. Okay, this process of science and process of adhyatma, frankly, is neti neti, not this, not this, not this. It's very difficult to put a finger and say what it is, but it's relatively easy, and I'm just saying relatively easy. In reality, it's very difficult to tell what it definitely is not, which theory is definitely false, which claim is definitely false. That is relatively speaking easy to explain. So you propose a theory, then if you propose a theory, then you're going to collect the data based on that. Now this could be from ancient text, this could be from your past background knowledge, okay, the agama. And then once you know what evidence it is, now you have to decide how are you going to go test it in an objective empirical fashion, that is that pratyaksha. And if you are successful, then you will draw the inference and try to answer your tough problem. Now what is the challenge here? What this SS has written, actually there are many questions and hardly or anything on answers, even as simple as a background knowledge. For example, he said he wanted to know where Brahmaloka was, which means the location might have shifted. Well, fine, let's not go there. Either way, we are not going to solve this problem. So one question is, where is Brahmaloka? My answer is, I don't know. I have opinions, I have educated guesses and wild guesses and humorous guesses, but that's it. I don't know, and I don't know how to find it. At least with the available science and technology at our disposal right now. That is not to say in future that may not be possible, but right now I don't know. I am stuck. Okay, so that's the one question he wants to solve. Great. It's a very wonderful question. It's a tough problem to solve. I don't know if we have available prerequisites, available requisites, available information, available science, available technology to figure this out. That's just my understanding of it. Someone may have a different understanding. Okay. Question number 2. I'm just pulling this from his email to me. If time dilation references have correlation, so that when he says, and if different time dilation references in the Puranas have correlation, I don't know what those different time dilation references in the Puranas are. Now, yes, there are some descriptions into Yoga Vasishta, but you know what? Anyone who is interested, the person has to go and make a list of these things, okay? Not just leave it so casually and carelessly to someone, okay? So I would have liked it if SS would have also listed, look, Nileshji, I don't know if you know, or maybe you already know, these are the three references related to time dilation in our Puranas, and here are the Purana names, and here are their specific locations in this Purana, into this particular manuscript published by so and so and so on. I don't know if there are multiple references. I am aware of the one that I just mentioned from Bhagavad Puran, the Kukudmi. Okay, let's move on. And so his question is, if time dilation references have a correlation, like multiple references within different Puranas, and if they have a correlation. Well, I don't know what those different references are other than Kukudmi. So I am not in a position to even say in anything as to if they have a correlation. All right, that's why I asked the question, with what, and I even don't understand what it means by correlation. If he means by correlation in the sense, if there are these references in three places, are those 2-3 independent ones, and that kind of gives us the confidence that this is a real stuff that our sages knew thousands of years ago, and yeah, they may knew it, like Kukudmi story, King Kukudmi and Revati in Bhagavad Puran, just a brief mention of it. And don't ask me where it is, guys. I'm just going to give it to you as a homework, because the bigger objective I have is whoever is even has a small inkling of that curiosity, better read the whole Bhagavad Puran. Otherwise, guys, you are fooling yourself. You are not serious at all. Okay. So the reference to Kukudmi and his daughter Revati is actually truly fascinating, no doubt about it. But beyond that, I don't know how to do anything with it. It's absolutely fascinating. Okay, but beyond that, I just don't know. We don't have the science and technology, we don't have the means, we don't have the resources, none of that. Okay, next information there. How could, and his question was, maybe could this time travel led some of the warriors to, physically they are old, but in reality, what we call biological age, so to say, just like we talk about it, if you do take some online test, like how you eat and how much you exercise and your habits and your blood pressure, and you plug in all that information, and it will tell you what is your biological age. So somebody may be like a 50-year-old, but his or her biological age may be 33. Okay, something like this. In fact, I'm telling you this from some surveys that I have filled in, and that's what I have received. Anyways, so he is making a hypothesis, a fine one. How could the old warriors, possibly was this time travel accessible to these individuals, and that's why even though they are old, like say Bhishmacharya, who was more than 140 plus years for sure, Krishna, Arjun, they were like 71, 72, 73, somewhere there. Bhima, Yudhishthira, much older, so 2-3 years older. Drona, who was like 85 years old at the time of Mahabharata war, and many others, like for example Bhagadatta of Pragjotishpur, which I will again say definitely to the west of modern India, not in Assam, at least as far as the Mahabharata and Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana evidence is concerned. And as I have suggested, very likely from Baghdad in Iraq. He was so old, so when he was fighting, his, I don't know what to call those, like, the eyelids or whatever to call, he was so old that they were falling over his eyes, and therefore they needed to be tied up so that he can see and fight. So he was pretty old, that's what we know. And so in that context, SS is asking, like, could this have anything to do with they having an ability to time travel, therefore they were actually doing a time travel and thus keeping themselves young? Yeah, very wild possibilities. Now keep this in mind, it's not easy, very naive, childish, idiotic to laugh at such theories. Okay, and some people feel better about themselves. No, that's nonsense, but hey, that's good that they feel better. A very depressing life it must be. Actually, all the new novel innovative theories are bizarre. Okay, So there is nothing surprising about them. Now in the retrospect, we don't feel it like this. But for example, forget Einstein suggesting the relativity, special relativity, general relativity, and so on. But even as simple as Copernicus suggesting that sun is at the center and not the earth was thought to be extremely bizarre, very daring, very courageous, and wild. Okay, ditto for Kepler saying the orbits are elliptical, and ditto for Newton writing the formula and saying that two inertial bodies in space have an attractive force towards them. And very mediocre people, and not all of them, but because their knowledge, the background knowledge was so primitive, they dared ask Newton, almost making a fun of him, saying, okay, we accept that, but where are those ropes that are tying these inertial bodies to generate that attractive force? Okay, so yes, all the new theories, when they are proposed, they are bizarre. Okay, they are entertaining, people are shocked, people make fun of it, many things happen with that. So there is no criticism of SS. In fact, this is very fascinating thinking that he is doing, and congratulations. Okay, now the next one is time travel the answer to question 3, which is what he is suggesting. And of course he's not saying this is it, but this is something, this is an interesting possibility that he want to test. Okay, and then what is the assumption related to that? The time traveler would age less in comparison to folks here on earth, okay, who did not travel, did not do time travel. And so the point here is, was time travel secret of longevity of Mahabharata folks? But keep this in mind, he's in a way, he wants to solve this, but there are too many questions, okay, and too little of a background knowledge to go with. That's why, again, I'm just taking this opportunity to bring up this subject of Naya dasan and the 16 elements that Naya dasan asks us to study deeply and build expertise if we want to learn how to think properly and how to solve problems, okay, and so on. Life is problem solving in a joyous sense, okay, not something to worry about. Okay, in fact, Professor Wheeler, of Princeton, like he was a professor, PhD guide to Richard Feynman. One of his famous quote, he says, our challenge is to make the mistakes as fast as we can, because science progresses through errors, through mistakes. But again, I'll bring up the subject. Some of our snob Indologists or Indic researchers, okay, so they may have expertise in other areas like Sanskrit and some other areas, but they have no idea of how this method of science works. So for example, they have made blunders, and frankly, their mistakes, their errors have actually allowed me to discuss some of my original work of last 30 years. So in a way, I'm thankful to them for that. But they have an extremely wrong attitude towards their own blunders and mistakes and errors. Okay, they almost feel insulted. Okay, I mean, they should recognize that it's error, but because they feel insulted, they would rather not accept their mistake and continue with it. Well, so Professor Wheeler says our challenge is to make mistakes as fast as possible. I would add something. Well, definitely so. I completely agree with Professor Wheeler, but I will add our challenge is also to recognize that we have made mistakes. Okay, otherwise, how can we make progress? So these 16 elements is the foundation that Nyaya Darshana asks us to develop expertise. Okay, and this is not some just reading the list and knowing their Sanskrit names and knowing the meaning. Nah, that's not even scratching the surface. You have to spend a decade, and some people are smart learners and they may be able to do it in 6 months, and kudos to them. So I'm not like saying specific time, but it takes lot of effort, that much I am certain. So if somebody is aware of this, and these have many sub layers, by the way, but the main 16 elements. So for example, pramana, the understanding, is there a evidence out there? Okay, pramana, now sometimes the English translation is the crude one, means to get the real knowledge. That's correct, but whatever those means are is there a sufficient information available? Prameya, which is like, can we intelligently formulate a hypothesis or a theory, okay, which follows the norms of Adhyatma or a science, which is to say it has to be generic, it has to be universal, and so on. Samshaya, can we refine our samshaya? What exactly we are after? Prayojan, can we clearly describe the utility of what we are doing or we plan to do, we propose to do? If that is not there, guys, okay, we may not get sufficient resources to succeed. Drishtanta, it goes back to background knowledge. Okay, now this may come later in terms of explaining to others, but it also has a utility in formulating the thought experiments and then turning those thought experiments into empirical lab experiments. Okay, Siddhanta is like, if we go through this process and succeed, then the truth, and so on. Avayava is what we are going to focus on in this episode. Tarka, you know what, just from the word. Nirnaya is the final determination, and Vada is like, suppose there are two different points of view, two different claims, two different theories for the same problem. Then now we have to go through this debate, go through this intelligent discussion aimed at finding the truth, okay, and find out which one, either the both are wrong, or if one of them is right, which one it is, and why did we, or how did we decide it. And even if that may not be right, but it is better of the two, and how do we again decide that? That happens through Vada. And if people don't understand this, if they are not after the truth, but they are after their self-glory and some other endeavors, then it's very natural for them, when they don't have the ability to achieve the truth or aspire for the truth, they jump into Jalpa, Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati. And Nigrasthana is basically, they make an ass of themselves in no time. Okay. Now here the translation is given as discussion given in support for success. Okay. It is also considered point of defeat. When actually someone jumps into Nigrasthana, typically, usually through Jalpa, Vitanda, Hitva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, or a combination thereof, basically they will not admit, they will not even realize, many onlookers will also not realize, but basically they have been defeated. They have lost the point, okay? And that's why, again, understanding Nyaya Darshana is very important. If we have to truly listen to a Vada, participate in the Vada, and if we are just an onlooker, still trying to decide who actually did better. Many times, like in my another episode, I mentioned like 4 instances of debate, 3 with 3 individuals and then 1 as a panel discussion. And usually, if I go and look at the comments, or my team sometimes pulls those comments, it's actually, some of them are good and praising everyone, and that's great. But many are actually pathetic, which is to say, I can sense that those people who are writing the comments, they have Shraddha. Okay, that's all good. Okay, they are respectful to both participants, but I also sense that they do not have critical ability to find out who did what and which one was a good argument, which one was a bad argument, which one was a Jalpa, which one was Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, and Jati. And on which particular point one person defeated the other, and therefore the person's theory is or claim is wrong. So unless you learn this, it's like watching cricket. If you don't know the rules of cricket, you're not going to enjoy it as much, other than you will clap when others are clapping, okay? Or somebody hits the ball too much and you will clap, and you just won't know who are you clapping for. Therefore, knowing these rules of Nyaya is very important to learn how to think properly, but even listening to others to recognize who is thinking properly and who is not thinking properly, who is making a proper argument and who is not making proper argument, and who is using the logic of scientific method properly and who is not using it. Okay, let's move on. So I'm taking this avayava, that is number 7, and now expanding it. For example, in the definition of avayava, this is directly from Nyaya Darshan. It says pratijna, hetu, udaharana, upanaya, nigamanani, avayava. These are the 5 elements, the members, whatever you want to call it, are proposition, reason, example, application, and conclusion. Many times this is not bad, many times the translation does not do a good job at all, and that is also the case here, but that shouldn't be a limiting factor. Proposition, okay, what exactly you want to do, like pratijna, nishchay, what are you after, have you clearly defined what your goal is? The reason is like a theory, like a hypothesis, okay, reason that you are giving for that, based on what you are making your proposition, okay, how you are going to solve the problem, what is the foundation of it, that's your hypothesis, that's your theory. The example is the Sanskrit word is udaharana, also it is drishtanta, and it is a part of a background knowledge. Okay, now sometime if you read multiple commentaries, they will go on give some other explanation for that. I'm saying if anyone in the example does not recognize it's a drishtanta, but more important, that drishtanta knowledge is coming from a background knowledge. Why is that important? Because drishtanta is used to make intelligent thought experiments, turn those thought experiments into practical experiments, and also when you finally solve the problem, you want to explain it to the masses, and again you use drishtanta. Why? Because you are taking the folks from what they know to what they don't know. Just a simple example of drishtanta, like Einstein's theory of relativity, and somebody said, oh, but that's a complex math, and vectors, but even tensors, and multiple complicated Riemann mathematics, statistics, and whatnot. Okay, what is it? Can you explain it to me simply? And one person said, or I don't know who coined that metaphor. He says, look, in our normal life, don't we say the train has arrived at the station, or train comes to the station, or train leaves the station? And they said, in relativity, it doesn't matter whether you say train arrived at the station or station arrived at the train, or as we say train left the station. It doesn't matter if you say station left the train. Okay, so this is how what I mean by the drishtanta or example. And the reason we use that, because that allows many people to understand. The simple, wonderful, beautiful definition of Nyaya Darshana on the Udaharan or Drishtanta is this: Laukika Parikshakanam Yasmin Arthe Buddhi Samyam Sa Drishtanta. The goal of Drishtanta, objective example, is to bring everyone on the same page by using simple examples that majority already knows, and therefore it comes from that background knowledge. You have to know what people know, and it's not very easy, and we don't always succeed anyways. And then the application upanaya is actually using everything that we have stated so far, the proposition, the reason, the drishtanta, and use that to actually now perform the experiments, the key aspect of solving the problem. Okay, that's the upanaya, applied application. And when it's done, and if we succeed, then we can conclude and agree with the proposition, or if that's not the case, then we disagree with the proposition. All right. Now some people, Nyaya Darshana, add additional 5 avayava to this, and I'm mentioning it for a simple reason. Okay, the jidnyasa, the reason is they are kind of relevant here. Jidnyasa, samshaya, shakya prapti, prayojana, and samshaya vidasa. So out of this, like this essay showed jidnyasa, samshaya also, like whether that has the effect on this, we don't know, and we want to find out. He's not asserting that it's already exists. He questions it, and he wants to know if that could be the explanation. So that's very good. This is a good way of putting a samshaya. Prayojan is to find out the secret. So that's also reasonable. Okay, samshaya vidas, we are not there yet. And shakya prapti is the point that he definitely missed, but actually many more points. So let's quickly look at what the points he possibly missed, or really will have a challenge. It's not like he missed them, but he will have a challenge. For example, he did not state it, so I'm stating it for him. It's my version of what the theory may look like. If somebody does not agree, then they have to formulate their own. Okay, it's not sufficient to say, Nilesh, your formulation of a theory is wrong. That's idiocy. The other name for that is vitanda. Okay, or even sometimes jati. It's an irrelevant objection. For heaven's sake, tell me what is your theory then. Okay, so the theory I put forward there is time travel allowed MB folks, I used this in a generic warriors, not all of them, some of them, but let's keep it generic, to remain younger and or sustain vigor at old age, and therefore they could fight. Okay, that's a reasonable one that he wants to test. That is what he wants to test. Now the question is, so the final answer that he's wanting to know is yes or no. I mean, yeah, is there a correlation that we can establish, a possible causality that we can establish, or no? Okay, so that's a possible answer. We don't know which one. So I have set out there both possibilities. Now that we get back to evidence, it is the theory that defines what you can measure, what you can look at it as a evidence. So time travel allowed MB folks to remain younger and or sustain vigor at old age. We have no way of testing their vigor other than the verbal description, Shabda Praman. We don't know whether they looked, how they looked, and so on and so forth. They looked younger, I mean, some of the descriptions, but those are descriptions. We have no photographs of them, and so on and so forth, or any fossilized records that kind of says, well, in some sense, based on some criteria, this guy is 80-year-old, but look, if you look at certain aspects, his muscles and teeth and God knows what else, oh, they are like a 24-year-old. I mean, we don't have that kind of evidence. But anything, what evidence we have for time travel? We understand that is a thought experiments. Some interesting experiments have been performed with aeroplanes flying, taking the clocks on them and the slowing down of a time detected at a micro and millisecond level. Yeah, so those experiments have been done based on and related to Einstein's theory of relativity and so on, and time travel. But other than that, we don't have anything. So anyways, the point is there is no evidence in the Mahabharata text. Okay, so that's that's problem number one. But the next one is, well, because we don't have evidence, but even the sidebar evidence we have from outside Mahabharata, okay, whether it is the modern experiments with aeroplanes with clocks on them and the slowing down of clocks, or a story like King Kukudmi and his daughter Revati. Other than these descriptions, we don't have a way to test this. I don't know. So don't just come and say, Nilesh, actually there is a way. Well, go about, make a podcast, write a blog, write a book, and talk about it. And I'm not saying this to SS, I'm just saying this to folks in general who will just make some useless comment like this, very naive, careless, casual comment. This falls into Jalpa, Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chalo, and Jati. And basically, it leads to the conclusion the guy is useless, okay? Or that comment is useless. He or she may be better in something else, but this is not their forte. So we don't even, not even relevant I have written, since we don't have the evidence yet. But even little evidence we know outside Mahabharata, we don't know how to test it. We don't know how to even make use of it to design experiments to validate this, okay? And so therefore we are not in a position to try this. Now the background knowledge I already discussed. So time dilation theory, again, at knowing this at superficial level is actually dangerous. One should go at 20 levels deeper and understand what is suggested. Read books by Professor C.K. Raju, like 11 Dimensions of Time and so on. Read books by Einstein, Henry Poincaré, read some Maxwell, read by some great guys like that. Einstein's books, many books written on relativity. Then you may be in some position to discuss this further. I mentioned story of Kukudmi and Revati. Don't ask me immediately, Nidashi, what is that story? No, go read it multiple times, do the Parayan, then you'll start getting insights, okay? So that's kind of our background knowledge. And we are stuck, guys. We are stopped here. So therefore, the Shakya Prapti is very important point. We may have interesting questions that we want answers for, but if we don't have sufficient background knowledge, if we don't have the science and technology at a level where we can take the thought experiments, and actually we don't even have a thought experiments here, how we plan to do this, plan to test it. But even if we have a thought experiments, then there is always this next hurdle of Tantra Yukti, how to take a thought experiment and turn that into a empirical lab experiment, okay? So that's where I want to leave it. So great, he had some great questions, SS. So thank you, congratulations for thinking and truly thinking of doing it yourself. Don't give up. The idea of this episode is not to tell you not to do anything about it, but there is a lot more background work that needs to go before even a flinch or a click, okay, or a moving of a needle in this direction would happen. If you want to know more of how to formulate a problem, how to use the logic of scientific method framework, how to use the Pancha Avayava framework, very consistently it's been used in all my 3 books that you see on the screen, available in India, home delivered from subbupublications.com. If you are outside India, around the world, from Amazon, different covers, identical books. The historic Rama is same as 12,209 BC. If you are interested in learning one of the great languages of the world, namely Marathi, this is a book in Marathi. It's being translated in other languages. When that's available, you will know. No point asking me, you will not get an answer. But if you want to study Marathi, if you already know Marathi, go grab it. If you don't know it, go grab it. You will learn Marathi. Okay, some 14 essays or so on different aspects of the Indian astronomy, how deep it is, how antique it is. Antique not in the sense of old and useless, but how fascinating it is when most of the world was jumping on the trees and not even following basic etiquettes of hygiene and whatnot. The Indian astronomers were doing amazing things. And of course, this is not limited to Indian astronomy, but because the book is about Indian astronomy, I'll just mention that aspect of it. All right, then my books, as many of you may know, have been translated into other languages, are being translated into other languages. Just one example is the historic Rama, aka also known as 12,209, translated in Marathi, Aityasik Ram, available from Paramitra publication. Scan this code, pay the money, discounted price, what is it, 360 plus 40, only in India guys, only in India, delivered for 40 rupees. Okay, and get that book, start reading. Again, this is in Marathi. I told you about the other books. That's it, guys. All right, please write your comments. Let me know what you think of this. And this is just an illustration of the kind of examples, kind of questions I get. Too many. And this one was very clearly written. So SS, thank you for writing this very clearly. And hope you find this feedback as a useful. So of course, I have given you brief feedback in response there. But this is all that I wanted to say, and I didn't want to write this. So I made this episode. All right. Thank you, everyone. And in case you are wondering what is this here, this is a modern art using electrical cable. Okay. So enjoy it. I'll talk to you soon in another episode with another interesting subject. Keep watching, keep reading. Namaskar.